So Games Workshop states there's big reveals coming next week, with a new Warhammer 40k Codex roadmap at the Nova Open. Looks like Space Marines are going to be appearing on a new Amazon TV series called Secret Level. I thought I'd share what appears to be pretty much a free Termagant exploit if you live in the USA, and a few other bits of 40k news. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I mainly wanted to talk about the upcoming 40k roadmap preview, and also touch on a few other interesting bits that I maybe didn't really think needed a video all of their own. Over the past couple of months, it's been a slightly quieter time for the big model previews from Games Workshop. It appeared that they cancelled 2 of them in a row. Not 100% sure of the motivation for that, but looks like they're back rolling again with their Age of Sigmar one, then the Kill Team one that we had last weekend, and now a new big one coming from Nova Open 2024. This one's the first one of their live event previews returning, I believe. The Sigmar one and Kill Team were online only. So I guess that this one will have the live reveal show in person, and then a pre-recorded video made in the studio that they do now, and that's the one that gets broadcast, and then they share all the articles and things to the Warhammer community webpage. Nova's one of the events that Games Workshop often turns up to do preview shows and takes a bit more seriously. Last year it wasn't too long after the launch of 10th edition. We had a whole bunch of Space Marines from their Codex release wave, including the new scouts and things. So hopefully they'll have something good this year. They do describe them as big previews, though admittedly they normally do. In any case, the preview will be going live at 8 PM Eastern Time next Wednesday, so that's the 28th of August. That equates to 1 AM British time on Thursday the 29th, and the other times are broadcast around the world. Before we talk about what's likely coming and some of the biggest implications, I'd just like to quickly mention Titan's Terrain, who sponsored today's video. I mentioned them recently in a 40k terrain options video, and it looks like a fair few of you decided to give them a try. Basically the idea behind this one is pretty much pop-up instant wargaming terrain, a board made up of 12 tiles that can unfold from flat pack, so you can store it super easily, and then you basically get instant terrain out of the box without having to do any hobby work or anything like that. Quite a nice fun looking board of pre-made terrain, and it's significantly less than you'd expect to pay if you were going through, say, Games Workshop, though of course plenty of other options exist. They'll be linked below in the video description if you'd like to check them out, otherwise I'll talk through a few more of the pros and cons at the end of this video. Big thanks to them for sponsoring one in any case. Getting back to this big preview though, in their promo video for it, they told us the 4 game systems that would have things shown off for this one, and those are Warhammer 40k, the Horus Heresy, Age of Sigmar, and the Old World. Looks like it's mainly their big games here, I guess, besides Kill Team, which just had its big preview last weekend, I guess. Maybe trying to manage expectations a little bit, Games Workshop said that there'd be some new miniature reveals, but the main focus will be on codexes and releases to come, so essentially roadmaps for the games. If I had to guess myself at this point, I suspect that we'll see a 40k roadmap going out into the future a little bit, and then maybe a couple of character reveals and book cover reveals, maybe for the next 1 or 2 codexes after Blood Angels. Currently we're in the pre-order window where Imperial Agents has gone on sale but hasn't been shipped out yet most of places. Blood Angels is going up for pre-order at the weekend, so I guess they'll be the next codex that's out there. There's at least some chance we might actually get other codexes dropped before the full Blood Angels release, which could be a little bit later on if they string it out a bit. My guess is though that the reveals will probably be characters and maybe Battle Force box sets for the launches. I feel like if it was a bigger release, like say the Dark Angels, the Kroot, or the Blood Angels this year, they might make a bit more of a big deal of that and not focus on roadmaps. Codex roadmaps have definitely been something that has been in the community discussion for a while now. Whenever Games Workshop have been talking about 40k reveals, people have often been responding to that in the comments, asking can you share a roadmap? They just quite like the idea of what's coming next, and the last one was a big 9 months ago. It only took us up to summer 2024 and didn't even show off Imperial Agents out of that. That was the one that turned out to be the classified one, and then we've had Blood Angels after that, which I guess will technically wind up being the first codex of autumn, as Games Workshop treats their Battle Force box sets as a sort of pre-sale as opposed to the main launch. If they go by a similar sort of pattern, I might expect them to show off the ones for perhaps autumn, winter, and maybe spring if we're lucky. Hopefully a good amount of the remaining codexes that they've still got to go. It would be quite nice if they managed to get the bulk of them done at least before 10th edition is halfway through. It was certainly a bit painful for armies that only had their codex properly go live 6 months or so before 10th edition came about, the Astra Militarum and the World Eaters in particular. I think roadmaps are important to 40k collectors, It helps set realistic expectations for what Games Workshop's actually going to do, maybe help plan purchases, say if you've got multiple armies that don't have released codexes yet. And I feel like the announcement always generates a little bit of hype and things to look forward to, even if admittedly getting a codex can be a bit of a mixed blessing in 10th edition. It certainly seems that there's been enough demand for this that Games Workshop's actually taken notice again. I took a look at that fabricated road map that seemed that someone had made in Photoshop. No one was this one here. Most of the releases look really quite reasonable, to be honest. In particular, the only one that we did have confirmed was Grey Knights coming sometime in 2025. Beyond that, there hasn't really been any proper time frame. In any case, though, if they follow the same pattern as Ninth, it feels like the vast majority of codexes should be out by summer 2025, with only a few being after that who get a bit unlucky. It's probably not the worst idea, though, to actually get some confirmed things out if people are starting to make stuff up, and really quite convincingly with the photo edit on this one. Otherwise, a bit tangentially to 40k, I feel like the Horus Heresy roadmap could also be very interesting for 40k collectors as well. Last time for Heresy, they gave us really quite an extensive roadmap, and perhaps some of the most fun things for 40k collectors were the Mystery Army release that they did, which turned out to be Solar Auxilia, a bunch of the Cerastus Knights in plastic, such as the Acheron and the Castigator, and the newly ascended Demon Primarch Fulgrim, maybe giving us a taste of what the 40k version will be later in 10th. If we do get a similar sort of Heresy era roadmap, they might be announcing certain other super heavies, perhaps things like the Atropos Cerastus Knights, the Quest Ormagera and Styrex, or the Armiger Moirax potentially. I think most people enjoy seeing new Sculpts and Demon Ascended Primarchs and things. They might well do some of the other traitor ones out of that, I guess. I think most intriguingly of all, perhaps, is the possibility for Custodes in plastic. Given that they'd redone the Mechanicum and the Solar Auxilia, it only seems like a matter of time before Custodes get a plastic release, and that could be one that's super relevant for both Heresy and 40k. Currently in 40k, Custodes really do feel like half an army, where they're missing all of their grav tanks, jump infantry, and their cool dreadnoughts and vehicles things. I feel like the best outcome for this would be that they release the kits in Heresy boxes and just put them into the regular 40k codex as normal units. Perhaps more than most things, they just don't really feel like an army that really needs to vary with their miniatures between the Heresy and the 40k setting. I think that could be really interesting, though I think I would be a little bit wary of such a release. I just think it would be great if Games Workshop could give us some guarantees that they aren't going to send them to Legends like they did with the Leviathan Dreadnought and Contemptor Dreadnought and things for the Space Marines in 10th. Otherwise, for 40k things, it looks like Amazon's first 40k offering since Games Workshop agreed that deal won't be Henry Cavill's TV series, but it sounds like they're going to be doing some animated shorts first, as part of a video game anthology series called Secret Level. On the face of it, it sounds like it might not be so very different from the animated short type things they've done on Warhammer Plus, most of which I'd say have tended to be pretty good. They're obviously not really getting the attention that they might get otherwise if they weren't locked to a very niche streaming platform that no one outside the hobby will really subscribe to. Apparently this one's going to be made by the creative team who made Love, Death and Robots, which is interesting. I feel like that's probably good news if so. I've watched a fair few of those personally. They generally manage to be some pretty good and disturbing sci-fi shorts, so at least would likely have the scope to catch the grittiness of Warhammer 40k and not hold back from it. Sounds like it might be sort of the same sort of idea for that, but for video games, and the Warhammer 40k one is going to be an episode simply called Chaos, and it's going to star Lieutenant Titus from the Space Marine 2 game, who will have the same voice actor as that, so that's a bit of continuity there, I guess. Will be interesting to give that one a watch in any case. Always cool to see 40k coming to a bit more of a mainstream audience. This one's probably not going to be quite as big as that TV show if and when it happens, but still should be kind of fun. Hopefully they manage to do it well. Otherwise, a slightly silly thing that I had shared with me recently was the fact that in theory you could get near enough free Termagants with the Space Marine box game from Target over in the USA. This one was a bit of an unusual release, a sort of limited one to Target stores, so not sold by Games Workshop themselves. Perhaps particularly interesting given that it's got a unique sculpt in it, a sculpt of Lieutenant Titus out of the Space Marine game, and maybe being one of the Warhammer miniatures that a whole load of people who are into that might like to pick up, even if they aren't big collectors otherwise. This box game is $40 for Titus, 20 Termagants, and 2 Ripper Swarms, and it creates a weird sort of supply and demand thing as it's only available in North America in Target stores. So basically there's the rest of the world out there that wants the Titus figure, but the only way to get your hands on it reliably is buy it off someone second hand who's reselling. I noticed there'd even been sales on it recently where it was going for less than this. I think I saw a Target sale where it was going for $32 briefly. Basically, it means though if you happen to live in the USA, it sort of looks like on paper you can get near enough free Termagants out of this box set. If you're a bit enterprising, you could basically buy the Space Marine board game for $40. List the tightest model on eBay for whatever people are prepared to pay for it, including overseas shipping, and looks like it's around about $40 worth of profit after that before shipping fees. Then eBay themselves take a cut, so you might wind up around about $8 down, but in theory it's a bit weird that you could essentially pay $8 for 20 odd Termagants here if you happen to be a Tyranid collector and wanted to flesh out the horde with even more flesh borers. This one does feel like a bit of a weird one. It's not the same as scalping something that's in limited supply. It's just weird that it's a box set that's in good supply but only in one region of the world and isn't in any supply elsewhere. So it means that supply and demand mean that people want the Space Marine sculpt elsewhere, but there'll be only so many to go around as people actually bother to pick this up. In reality, it's probably not the most practical. Lots of people have loads of Termagants from the starter sets anyway, but just thought it was a strange situation caused by the price of Warhammer and the fact that Games Workshop releases something in one region but not another, and the end result can essentially be a whole bunch of free Termagants for those who want them. Otherwise, for releases and reveals this week, Games Workshop said that a Blood Angels Combat Patrol reveal will be coming in one of their preview articles. In their teaser earlier, they confirmed that there was basically a Blood Angels captain and a Sanguinary Guard set in it, so at least it does have models of a bit more theme of it compared with the previous one. It'll be interesting to take a look at that and see what the value is though. I feel like it might be a shame to lose this one, given that as it goes I think it was quite a good generic Space Marine box set, even if it wasn't exactly the most Blood Angels force in the world with no jump infantry. Otherwise, for the week's releases, I've talked a lot about the Blood Angels launch box, which seems to be $230. Beyond that, it looks like it's Legion Imperialis and Middle-earth releases. If you want a bunch of tiny termite assault drills or Lehman Russ exterminators, then looks like the tank foundries are still rolling them out. Finally, I thought I'd mention a slightly silly faked article that I saw going around social media a little bit. I guess made in at least a fairly convincing manner that looks very much like a Warhammer community sort of announcement type page, but the amount of comments that I saw taking this seriously were a little bit disturbing. This one's supposed to be a press release regarding the Sanguinary Guard's wings, stating that in an attempt to focus on the more bellicose nature of the Blood Angels chapter and less on the cartoony and heavy-handed flavourings, they decided to move away with a bit of the bling, and announcing a supposed expansion pack that gives you bird heads, bird wings, bird feet, and enough nipple parts to cover an entire army. Can't help but think that Games Workshop would be scraping the barrel if they really were selling upgrade packs with the primary selling point being Sanguinary Guard nipples. It really doesn't seem to be a talking point that's going away for them though. On their preview article for the Sanguinary Guard rules, I saw that just about every second comment on their Facebook page was about the lack of wings on the models, and even some recent artwork still seems to be depicting them with wings as well, which probably didn't help matters too much. Finally, to swing back to talking a bit more about Titan's Terrain, the video sponsor. As mentioned, could be of interest to some of you. A fairly snazzy looking terrain system with some pop-up cardboard tiles, both at least a fairly affordable way to cover a battlefield in terrain with a comparable sort of price to MDF and significantly cheaper than Games Workshop's offerings. For the terrain, the biggest advantages are mainly its collapsible nature. All the squares fold in half and pack flat, basically in a sort of box set that's the similar size to board games, so it can be handy enough if you need to transport things but don't have a massive amount of room to do so. And as well as that, doesn't take any work to actually get a full table of terrain. A lot of people aren't the fastest with painting, so not having to paint up an entire board worth of hobby work could be a time saver for some out there. Obviously, every terrain set has its advantages and disadvantages. From online feedback and Reddit and things like that, it's generally considered to be a little bit less sturdy and hard-wearing than things like plastic and MDF, given that it is made of strong cardboard and it needs to fold flat. Just might need a little bit more looking after and care taken with it than some. The grid layout can be a bit less flexibility than some, though it still has plenty of options with rotating the tiles or adding a bit of further terrain on top of that if you want to make things a bit denser. The grid can make a few firing lanes, so might still have some advantage to have just a couple of extra bits to place on top. For most casual games, a lot of people do seem to find it pretty useful though. In any case, for the specific sets that they offer, they have this Forgotten Furnace one, which is a sort of mechanical industrial hellscape. A bunch of corner ruins, some interesting shrines with some chaotic style symbols on them, and the normal price of these tends to be £112, $140 or €130. Their second set is a Shattered Hive, a bit more of a traditional industrial city that's been bombed out. plenty of corner ruins and broken down buildings to fight over there. And then finally they've got their overgrown capital set, a whole bunch of slightly grand ruined buildings and things like that. Maybe a set that could be a little bit more applicable both to fantasy settings and the grim darkness of the far future. Then within those sets they've got a few centerpiece things as well, big things that take 2 tiles to make as they're bigger constructions. For the furnace one there's an infernal spire, and then there's a ruined reliquary or cathedral square, basically the same sort of fancy building to put in the middle of the other 2 sets. In any case, big thank you to them for sponsoring the video. Feel free to check them out down in the video description if you'd like to pick some up. Obviously plenty of other options are available out there, lots of good stuff like 3D printed bits, MDF terrain, or just scratch building your own of course. Let me know your thoughts, expectations and hopes for the 40k previews. Which codexes do you feel like are coming sooner or later? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. And as ever, if you'd like to support, feel free to check out the channel's Patreon page. There's a few advantages, including automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways, regular votes to see what sort of things are coming on the channel, seeing certain videos early, and a few other things like Discord roles. If any of that's of interest, or you'd like to help support, the link's down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.